Okay, let's talk about body fat. When you hear that phrase, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably a place to store extra calories, right? Kind of like a storage closet for that last slice of pizza. Well, what if I told you that fat is actually one of the most misunderstood and honestly, one of the most fascinating parts of your entire body? Let's dive into its secret life.
Now, this isn't just some fluffy scientific language. This is how scientists see fat now, not as some passive storage bin, but as a central metabolic organ. I mean, think about that. An organ, just as important for managing your body's energy as your liver. It's an active player, constantly sending signals and making decisions that affect your whole system.
So that's the big question, isn't it? For decades, we've had this idea of fat as a simple closet we just keep stuffing things into. But if it's really a command center, what exactly is it commanding? And why does it sometimes feel like its commands are, well, leading us in the wrong direction? Let's unpack that.
All right, first things first, let's tackle that old storage closet myth head on. To really get what your fat is up to, we have to completely renovate how we think about it.
You know the old story. You eat more than you burn, your body takes that extra energy and it just shoves it into fat cells for safekeeping. End of story, right? The fat just sits there, like money in a piggy bank, waiting for you to use it. Simple, passive, and kind of boring.
But the reality is so much cooler. Your fat tissue is more like a bustling factory. It's an endocrine organ, which is just a fancy way of saying it makes and sends out its own hormones. You've definitely heard of one of them, leptin, the hormone that tells your brain, hey, we're full, you can stop eating now. Your fat is constantly talking to your brain, your muscles, your liver. It's not just holding energy, it's actively managing the entire energy grid.
Okay, so if fat is an organ, it's a pretty weird one, because it's not all in one place. It's spread out all over. And just like neighborhoods in a big city, each of these fat depots has a totally different vibe and a completely different job.
So let's start with the neighborhood we all know best, subcutaneous fat. This is the stuff that's right under your skin, the fat you can actually pinch. You can think of it as your body's built-in insulation and padding. It's great at storing energy and keeping you warm, and for the most part, it's the safer kind of fat to have around.
And then there's the hidden troublemaker, visceral fat. This is the fat that's deep, deep inside your belly, wrapped around your vital organs, like your liver and intestines. You can't see it, you can't pinch it. And while you need a little bit, when you get too much of this stuff, that's when the real metabolic problems can start.
And finally, we have the superstar of the group, brown fat. Now, unlike white fat that stores energy, this stuff burns it. It's absolutely packed with mitochondria, you know, the little power plants in your cells, which is what gives it that brown color. Its whole job is to just burn fuel to create heat, acting like a tiny furnace inside your body.
And this is exactly why location matters so much. That deep visceral fat is the one that's strongly linked to major health issues like insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So why is it so bad? Well, think about where it lives. It's right next to your vital organs, and it's constantly releasing these inflammatory signals that can mess with your liver's function and cause problems for your entire system. It really isn't just about how much fat you have, it's about where that fat is.
So you have to wonder, why are these fat neighborhoods so different? Is it just because of where they are? The answer, it turns out, is way deeper than that. It's literally written into their DNA from the moment they're created.
The best way to think about this is to go back to that city analogy. Imagine each fat depot is a neighborhood with its own set of zoning laws. This area is zoned for quiet residential homes, while this other one is zoned for heavy industry. And these rules were decided long ago, way back in the developmental phase.
In our bodies, these zoning laws are what scientists call unique developmental gene signatures. It's basically an architectural blueprint that's hardwired into the cells. This blueprint dictates the identity and job of that fat depot for its entire life. That's why a fat cell from your belly is just fundamentally built differently than one from your thigh. It was always meant to be that way.
And what's really amazing is that scientists can actually see this blueprint. They've found that each type of fat depot has a specific pattern of genes that are switched on or off, creating a kind of unique genetic barcode. It's this specific barcode that makes subcutaneous fat the quiet storage depot and visceral fat the noisy, inflammatory factory. And here's the kicker. This genetic barcode is incredibly stable. It's basically permanent. Researchers have looked at lean animals, obese animals, even fasting animals, and that core genetic signature in each fat depot, it doesn't change. This tells us it's a hardwired, intrinsic property. A visceral fat cell is born a visceral fat cell, and it stays that way. Okay, so if all these fat cells have their identities locked in from the start, how does it all go wrong when we gain weight? Well, it all comes down to how our fat tissue chooses to expand. And one way is healthy, while the other is really dangerous.
So it turns out your fat can grow in two different ways. The healthy way is to simply make more fat cells. Your body creates new, small, efficient little cells to store energy. But the unhealthy way is when your existing cells don't multiply. They just get bigger and bigger and bigger, swelling up like overinflated balloons. And that unhealthy expansion kicks off a total disaster. First, the fat cells get so big they literally outgrow their own blood supply. They start to suffocate from a lack of oxygen. These stressed-out, oxygen-starved cells start screaming for help, sending out all these inflammatory signals. This sets off an alarm, and your immune cells come rushing in, but instead of fixing the problem, they just pour gasoline on the fire.
And this isn't just a small, local fire. All that inflammation starts to spill out of the fat tissue and affects your entire body. This chronic, low-grade inflammation is one of the main things that drives systemic problems like insulin resistance. And that, as we know, is the first major step on the path to type 2 diabetes.
So, what's the big picture here? What does all this mean for the future? It means we have to stop demonizing fat. We need to start seeing it for what it truly is, a complex and vital organ that can either be healthy and functional or unhealthy and dysfunctional.
All right, let's just boil it all down. 4 key things to remember. 1. Fat is an active, talking organ, not a passive storage bin. 2. Location, location, location. Where your fat is determines what it does. 3. Its job is programmed by a stable genetic blueprint from day 1. And 4. The real villain isn't fat itself, it's when fat expands the wrong way, by making existing cells dangerously large.
And just to really hammer home how serious this unhealthy expansion is, get this. Some scientists have noted that the way dysfunctional fat grows, outpacing its oxygen supply, creating inflammation, has remarkable similarities to how solid tumors grow. Wow. When you think about it like that, it really changes things, doesn't it?
And that leaves us with a fascinating final thought. We are just now learning how to read these genetic blueprints for our different fat neighborhoods. But if we can truly understand these zoning laws, could we one day figure out how to encourage our bodies to build healthier fat? Or maybe even remodel the unhealthy neighborhoods we already have? It's an incredible look at what the future of health might hold.